Argyll in Scotland, where thousands of oysters are hand-placed into the marine habitat in order to boost biodiversity, has been given a national award for success in seawilding. I've been speaking to Ray Mears, TV presenter and survival and bushcraft expert, who presented the award. He told me exactly what seawilding is.
It's very straightforward. It's about habitat restoration. And here there is a project to restore both the native oyster beds, which were once prolific in this area, and also meadows of seagrass. And the concept is obviously to restore habitats, to increase biodiversity, basically put right the wrongs of several hundred years of overexploitation.
And how is it done?
With a lot of hard work. It's really quite difficult. The first thing is to protect an area which is suited for the task, then to bring in with the oysters to grow up oysters, and then when they're large enough to transplant them to an area. And when it comes to the seagrass, well, that's cutting edge. I mean, people aren't really sure of the best way. They're experimenting with a whole range of different methods to restore, to reseed the area with seagrass. The best results at the moment seem to be with a Canadian method, which involves transplanting existing rhizome stock seagrass plants and actually planting them one by one into the right area.
One by one? How many people are involved in this?
It's a lot of people are involved, and they're local people. It's a community effort, community volunteers who see the benefit in restoring the ecosystem where they live, for both altruistic reasons, but also because, of course, in the future this will also safeguard income and natural resources that can be harvested.
This sounds a daft question, but put oysters into perspective. If any of us, the majority of us, I don't think I've ever had one. I vaguely know that they may be considered aphrodisiac or have aphrodisiac qualities. But what is their role in the universe? What do they do?
Well, they're prolific filter feeders. So each oyster can filter 200 litres of water every 24 hours. So that when you have millions of these creatures. Historically, these locks were absolutely filled with oysters. We know that from old accounts of early naturalists who came up here. So their purpose in the ecosystem, if you're looking for a purpose, partly is to filter the water and increase the health of the water itself.
So, is it really the case that thousands of oysters are going to be placed by human hands into a different location? I just couldn't get my head around that.
No, we're talking about 1 million. So
a million.
1 million.
Right.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's a drop in the ocean. What the aspirations are 1 billion oysters. So,
but how, Ray?
So far they've done 350,000. So they're doing really well. And it's worth bearing in mind that oysters used to be found in places like the Firth of Forth in huge numbers, and large oysters. And there hasn't been one found there since the 1960s. So this is something that is essential to be replaced in the environment to improve it.
It does seem that there are so many community projects of this nature going on all over the British Isles, with loads of really committed individuals giving up their time. But that is a contrast to the way the current British government is working. And there seems to be a concentration actually on turning our backs on all kinds of environmental initiatives. What do you think of that?
I think we lack good leadership. I think we lack sound leadership, and I think Parliament lacks wisdom. And but they've got a shock coming, because I released a book earlier this year on British woodland, and talking to audiences about the book, one thing became immediately apparent, and that's how passionate people feel about nature, the environment, and particularly on their own doorsteps. And I think our politicians don't understand how deep that strength of feeling truly is. I think they've got a shock coming.
So you don't think that a political party that's proud to represent the motorist is a party that people are going to flock to vote for come the next election?
I think we're all rather confused about what to do in terms of our cars. We're being pushed to buy electric cars, but I don't understand why one of the car manufacturers hasn't produced the electric version of the Model T Ford, a very cheap, affordable electric car that everybody could buy for maybe £9,000. I mean, if they did that, the roads would be covered in them. But everyone is trying to exploit the consumer. And I think the consumer's suddenly woken up to this. And they're thinking, I think I'll just hang on and see what happens. And we need to think less about personal profits and more about sustainability and future generations. I think there's an old native saying that says that the state of the land reflects the values of the people. And when you take a look at our land, it's not very good, but a lot of people are passionate and are making a difference in little community projects like this one. And, what I find fascinating about this is funded by the National Lottery, which is in a way being funded by the larger population of the British Isles in that process. And that's a model that succeeds without the interference from Whitehall.
That is Ray Mears talking to me earlier from a slightly windy Argyll, but it did look absolutely beautiful there. It really did. I could see him on a camera and he looked like he was in a fabulous location. Tech news, let's catch up with journalist Chris Stokel-Walker. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
So let's go first of all to San Francisco, where a driverless car has caused an incident that does sound genuinely nasty. What went on here?
Yeah, this is, I think, the first sign of the apocalypse of tech rising up against us. The streets of California for around about a year or more have had driverless taxis by a company called Cruise. So this is the same sort of technology that anybody who's ever been in a Tesla will have seen before, where you can take your hands off the wheel. Mm-hmm. But the difference is that these Cruise taxis don't have any drivers in. There are remote operators that are able to kind of take over from some office somewhere in the distance if they need to. But it's had a little bit of a malfunction. It ended up dragging an individual, a pedestrian, who was hit by the car quite a long way, actually, and injuring them a little bit under the wheels. Now, the company says this was a minor thing, although I wouldn't like to be dragged 20 feet along the street under a taxi. And they kind of say, well, this is par for the course. Unfortunately, this has happened. We're going to try and establish what's gone on. But I think it does suggest and sort of act as a reminder, Jane, for the issues around tech of, what happens if you roll out these things without any sort of human oversight.
Can we talk about the big AI conference that is next week at Bletchley Park? I mean, a very significant location for Britain to have chosen. And Rishi Sunak is really keen that Britain should be absolutely at the forefront of good conversations about AI and how we're all going to have to live with it. But I gather that some people are angry that they haven't been invited and they don't like the lineup of people who have.
Yeah, around about 100 people have been invited to the event at Bletchley Park. For our listeners, I fear you're probably going to hear about this in the days and possibly weeks to come. It is meant to be the UK's chance to kind of stamp their authority on this rising tide of AI. Of those 100 people, though, there are an awful lot of big tech representatives and very, very few civil society representatives who try and keep those companies honest. And so there has been criticism of the guest list, essentially. Now, some of that is going to be, as with any party, if you're not invited, then you feel quite left out and you get a bit aggrieved. But there are real issues here. The guest list kind of tends towards those who have a vested interest, and if you have billions of dollars invested, as many of these companies do, OpenAI, Google, DeepMind, Microsoft are three of the big players in this space, you're not exactly going to agree in this meeting to regulation that cracks down on your financial returns. And there's also issues around representation. An awful lot of middle-aged, pretty rich men, very, very few women. And when we talk about the impact of AI on our society and the issues of it not being representative and encoding some of society's biases and acting as a kind of funhouse mirror in amplifying them, that becomes a massive issue.
Well, they must have thought this through. I should say that a couple of notable women are definitely going. Kamala Harris, the US Vice President. The first day is going to be hosted by Michelle Donnellan. Perhaps not a huge name on the global stage, but she is the Science, Innovation and Technology Secretary. So there are some women there. But you're right. I mean, it does look overwhelmingly, as ever, white, middle-aged male. 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 White,